Potentially avoidable death. A report into the fatal stabbing of schoolboy Bailey Gwynne brings a raft of recommendations. How should we best secure the safety of pupils? And getting in gear, driverless cars have their first public trial in the UK. Is this the start of the future? The fatal stabbing of the Aberdeen schoolboy Bailey Gwynne might have been avoided if staff had been warned that his killer carried weapons. That's one of the conclusions of the child protection expert Andrew Lowe, who today released the results of his inquiry into the tragedy. He's also recommended that teachers be given new powers to search pupils. Colin White reports.
Social work expert Andrew Lowe outlined his findings this morning at the headquarters of Aberdeen City Council. He spent months investigating the tragic events of last October and the row between Bailey Gwynne and another boy, known as Child A.
The course of the conflict was fatally altered by the possession of a bladed weapon by one of these boys. This was potentially predictable and avoidable if those who knew that Child A carried weapons in school had reported this to staff.
The tragedy unfolded around lunchtime at Cults Academy in October last year. An argument broke out between Bailey and his killer, a fellow pupil. Bailey was stabbed in the heart. He died in hospital hours later. In March, at the High Court in Aberdeen, after a 5-day trial, Bailey's killer, who can't be identified because of his age, was convicted of culpable homicide. In April, at the High Court in Edinburgh, Bailey's family were there to see his killer sentenced to 9 years detention. By then, Andrew Lowe had been appointed to lead an independent review into Bailey's death. Today, he published his findings. His 21 recommendations include urging the Scottish Government to amend the legislation for searching pupils. He also wants them to explore further legislation on the purchase of weapons online. Bailey's killer bought his knife on the internet. And he'd like a better sharing of knowledge about weapons among teachers, parents and pupils.
What I hope this report will make clear to all the children and the staff and everybody in the community that is the school is that they have a responsibility towards each other, and that responsibility to create a safe learning environment is a responsibility that bears on everyone.
Bailey Gwynne's killer often brought a knife to school. Some pupils knew that. Head teacher Anna Muirhead had spoken to him about weapons 2 years before the attack.
Well, it was all dealt with in the usual manner. He was interviewed by myself. Everything was put in his file. We dealt very closely with his parents throughout that period. So there was nothing untoward.
But Scotland's teachers say any move to give them new powers of stop and search is unacceptable.
Teachers in Scotland are trained to teach, to deliver education. They're not trained to provide a policing service for pupils in schools.
The Lowe Review has given the Scottish Government much to consider. Weapons in schools are not unique to Aberdeen, and today it was revealed that since the Bailey Gwynne attack, there have been a further 15 incidents involving weapons in the city's schools. Ministers have much to consider.
We've got to look very carefully at the considerations, the recommendations that have been put forward by the Lowe Report. We'll look at those within the context of wider government policy as we consider the implications of the Lowe Report. But the first and primary consideration we have today is to remember Bailey Gwynne and express our sympathies to his family at the loss that they have suffered.
Bailey's family have so far made no comment. Andrew Lowe said he'd spoken to them only yesterday and they'd shown remarkable dignity.
Well, joining us now are the anti-knife campaigner John Muir, whose son Damien was stabbed to death 9 years ago, and the independent education consultant Ken Cunningham, who is a former General Secretary of School Leaders in Scotland. Thank you both for joining us. Ken, what did you make of today's report?
Well, it'll be welcomed, I think, by everyone, because it kind of draws a line under the whole emotional incident that happened. Everybody was shocked across the country, as it would be. At that time, it would cause head teachers to reflect on their practice. I think what this report will do is give them the opportunity to stand by, reflect on what they do. But the one point I would pick up before we talk about any of the detail of it is a point that Andrew Lowe made, that we are all a community. We have to get the bit that we live together, we work together, we play together, and we have to protect together. And that message, more than anything, has to get over to schools and to others.
John, what was your impression of it?
Not as open as what you're saying. I feel that when you consider an inquiry coming to the public and telling them that we've got a number of things here we're going to ask the politicians around. Why are we going to ask the politicians? Because the politicians no more than 2.5 years ago stopped the stop and search. This is a professional person. That's a glaring error. Someone should be wondering or asking why he became so embittered to that.
What then about the detail, as you touched on, Ken, and in particular, teachers being asked to stop and search?
I mean, absolutely not. The point was made by EIS. Teachers are not police officers. Schools work because of an ethos, relationships, a building up of trust. Absolutely what I'd love to see in schools is the ability for youngsters to talk openly to staff, confidently to staff when they see something amiss. What we do not need are head teachers or teachers having a stop and search facility. At the moment, the legislation allows head teachers to voluntarily say to a kid, have you got something? Have you got something in your possession? Can I look? If the child says no, at that point, if you get any sense at all, you phone the parent and you phone the police, and you don't let them out your sight. But to actually force the issue of creates a kind of aggression and is unnecessary. The facilities there in law already. That's what the police are there for. No head teachers.
John.
The association, I concur with that 100%. When you consider that if students is caught by teachers under the current situation, the police are involved and they may come in and do all the things they've got to do. But what happens if they take this on themselves to get weapons away from children? What happens to that weapon once it's been taken from a child? Does someone take it away and destroy it the way the police would probably do? There's all these little nicky bits and pieces that's really got to be considered.
One other suggestion, and the report said that the tragedy could perhaps have been avoided if people who knew that the killer carried weapons had told teachers. Now, do children do that, or is this whole concept, the idea of they're looking at grass and their pals?
I think it was an unhelpful comment, to be honest, in that report. And you would wish that youngsters, if they saw something like that, and I had it in my own experience, they would come, they'd quietly sidle up, they'd say, sir, you want to have a wee look at something like that happened. Most youngsters are very good, they trust their teachers, and they will talk to them. For some reason or other, this hasn't happened in that kind of way in the school.
But the idea of children, the grass idea, that children can overlook that if it's serious enough.
If it's serious enough to be, there's a silliness of playgrounds. You wouldn't want that kind of ground. This is too serious. But that's where you come to the other bit. It's about what John was talking about. It's about education. It's about training youngsters and staff to understand we are in this together. We want to protect each other, and something like knives or any other dangerous weapon for that matter must not be part of the school community and has to be communicated in that way. And then the understanding, it will be dealt with. It will be dealt with. And that's important.
And John, you think the message has got through over recent years, particularly to younger people?
I do. We really have to sort of look at what we've done in Inverclyde, not what I've done, but what has been done in Inverclyde. Inverclyde and Strathclyde Police have worked very, very hard to get things moving. There's a programme called the bystander agreement or whatever that goes with it. But when you go to that, it means that you're going to the school and you're talking to students who are not all susceptible, but some are. You can get the message across to them, tell them how silly it is to carry it, how bad it can be, and the penalties can be the following. All of that gets passed across. Now, one school goes to the next school and does the same thing again, until the first one that started goes in reverse, and it's ongoing all the time that this, on the back of it, work is happening, but you're doing a good job to stop what's going on. And that's what's actually happening. Going back 9 years ago, if you knew the figures, it was compiled by someone else, not by yourself. It showed that some European countries had a lesser knife crime rate than Inverclyde. Now that's changed dramatically. And all compliments must go to the police and to the school.
So
ways of going round it.
So it can be done then. So if Inverclyde experience is anything to go by, although you were saying that just a minor point, older people tend to be carrying knives now in Inverclyde.
Yeah, but that seems to be from information, from conversations we've had. The average person the average age is between 25 and 27 years of age.
Okay.
Now that's a long way away from juvenile.
And Ken, finally, is there a danger here that this was obviously a tragic incident, isolated incident though, and that you can't? I hesitate to use the phrase, but that you can overdo this, and that actually, if you leave things well alone, introducing what you're saying and the communication, all the rest of it, then by and large we should be okay.
I think we should never rush into legislation. That's the first thing. The second one is it's always good that the issue is raised. It raises the whole profile. It does cause staff to reflect on what they're doing, how they're doing it, and to improve their practice. They will certainly do that in the back of this report, whatever else happens.
Okay. Ken, John, thank you both for joining us.
One of the things I'd like to finish on is when you look at what's actually happened, the age of the persons involved up there, that is a vulnerable age.
Yeah.
If it's looked after at the right time, they're going to get the right results.
Okay. On that point, we'll leave it. John, Ken, thank you both for joining us. Thank you.